A college campus turns into a battleground, complete with smoke bombs and riot gear, just 2 months after a shocking assassination.
Yeah, it is a truly staggering scene to watch.
And right now, we are seeing chaotic, violent clashes erupting at Turning Point USA events across the country.
Oh, absolutely. The footage is just intense.
Specifically, we're looking at massive unrest at UC Berkeley in California and a women's leadership summit in San Antonio, Texas.
Right.
Masked protesters smashed barricades. They threw explosives at police. Riot teams literally had to physically escort attendees to safety.
Which is just crazy for a campus event.
Exactly. But, this isn't just local news anymore. These street brawls triggered a massive federal crackdown. We are talking about pulling in the FBI, the Department of Education, and even a presidential executive order.
Yeah, we are watching a local security issue rapidly transform into a full-blown national security operation.
So today we're taking a deep dive into a huge stack of sources to understand exactly how local protests are escalating into federal terrorism investigations.
And we are looking at sources from all over the map to map this out impartially.
Right. Our goal isn't to take a side here. We just want to lay out the facts of how the rules of public assembly are changing in real time. Because if you attend campus events or, even just watch these protests on the news, the ground rules are shifting right beneath your feet.
They really are. And to understand why the federal government is dropping the hammer, we have to look closely at the tactical realities on the ground.
The actual methods used by the protesters?
Exactly. The specific tactics at these two events are really what forced this unprecedented response.
So let's look at the UC Berkeley incident first. Turning Point USA hosted an event with Christian apologist Frank Turek and the conservative actor Rob Schneider.
Right, and they had a pretty big turnout.
Yeah, around 900 people attended. But outside the venue, the sources describe the campus as a literal war zone.
And honestly, the video footage from the ground totally supports that. I mean, law enforcement was forced into this highly defensive posture just to keep the perimeter from collapsing.
Protesters set off smoke grenades and flares right outside the doors.
Which caused massive panic.
Oh, yeah. Attendees had to rush inside to escape the thick smoke. And there was this one terrifying moment documented in the sources where a car drove by and loudly backfired.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and the crowd just panicked. They started diving for cover because in that chaotic environment, they thought they were hearing gunshots.
Well, and the physical confrontations escalated just as quickly.
Right.
You had dozens of people waiting in line to enter, and they were essentially trapped between the building and the barricades. Meanwhile, masked agitators repeatedly rushed those barriers to test the police lines.
And it turned bloody very fast.
It did.
There was a man outside selling Freedom T-shirts honoring the late TPUSA founder, Charlie Kirk. And aerial footage actually caught a person dressed entirely in dark clothing just pummeling this vendor. Police eventually pulled the vendor away, and he was bleeding heavily from his face. By the end of the night, police in full riot gear had to form a physical wall just to escort attendees off the campus to their cars.
Right, and then when you look at the San Antonio event, you see a completely different type of gathering, but the exact same disruptive footprint.
A totally different vibe, yeah.
Exactly. This was a women's leadership summit focused on faith, wellness, and leadership. It drew 2,500 women to a hotel conference center.
But the disruption still managed to breach the perimeter there.
Yeah, right during the opening session.
Inside this massive auditorium, a protester infiltrated the crowd. She stood up and repeatedly yelled accusations at TPUSA CEO Erica Kirk, claiming she, quote, protects pedophiles.
Which is a heavy accusation to just shout in a crowded room.
Seriously. Hotel security swiftly removed her, but the chaos outside mirrored Berkeley perfectly.
Over 100 protesters gathered outside that hotel, and they blasted loud music and used noisemakers to try and drown out the summit.
But they didn't stop there.
No, they escalated. They started throwing snap-bang fireworks directly at the police officers who had formed a perimeter around the building.
And reading through these accounts, there's this very dark shadow hanging over all of this.
The assassination.
Exactly. Both of these events occurred exactly 2 months after TPUSA founder Charlie Kirk was assassinated at a college campus in Utah.
Right, so security was already on hyper alert.
Super high alert. Just before the San Antonio summit, authorities arrested a Texas man named Jacob Wensky for making explicit online death threats against attendees and Erica Kirk.
And that assassination completely altered the security calculus for these events.
How so?
Well, it forced law enforcement to treat these speaking engagements as potential active threat scenarios rather than, just standard political rallies.
Yeah, entering these events sounds less like a campus lecture and more like TSA at a high-security airport.
Exactly. Mandatory ID checks that had to perfectly match the tickets, a strict zero-bag policy.
No bags, no food, no banners.
Nothing. Yet, despite locking down the venues like fortresses, violence still broke out.
Which is wild.
It is. But what is really fascinating and troubling, honestly, is how protesters weaponized that recent tragedy. At both Berkeley and San Antonio, sources report that demonstrators explicitly mocked Charlie Kirk's death.
Wait, really?
Yeah, they chanted slogans celebrating the assassination.
That feels like a very specific, intentional choice.
It's a highly effective psychological tactic. When a crowd intentionally mocks a recent assassination, they instantly raise the emotional temperature of the entire environment.
Because it triggers the attendees.
Exactly. It guarantees a volatile reaction, and it forces the police to expect immediate violence. The police have no choice but to deploy riot gear and barricades.
Which gives the protesters the militarized visual they want for their own optics.
Precisely.
So this is not just a spontaneous angry crowd reacting to a speaker. The sources outline a highly organized strategy behind these disruptions.
Highly organized.
When reading the San Antonio police reports, the tactical organization honestly blew my mind. An organizer with a group called the Chicano Paramilitary Brown Berets explicitly divided the protesters into a two-tier system.
And the sophistication of that two-tier strategy is exactly what caught the attention of federal investigators.
It sounds like a military formation. They put one group in the front, acting less aggressively. Their designated role was to protest loudly, but without breaking the law, basically acting as a physical shield.
Right, and the explicit reason for that was to protect individuals in their group who were currently on court probation.
They literally kept the people who couldn't afford to get arrested out of reach of the police.
Exactly. Meanwhile, the second group, the Vanguard, took a highly aggressive stance.
Right.
Their explicit instruction was to intentionally antagonize the police, push the physical barricade line, and actively draw arrests.
Wow.
They repeatedly attempted to physically breach the police line protecting the hotel entrance, knowing the first tier would absorb the initial police pushback.
And we saw similar organized tactics regarding concealment, too.
Oh, the black bloc tactics.
Yeah, at both the California and Texas events, protesters dressed entirely in black. They wore masks, and in many of these recent cases, Palestinian kefias.
Right, to completely hide their identities from law enforcement and surveillance cameras.
Black bloc is incredibly effective at neutralizing local policing, isn't it?
It really is. Because it is not just about wearing black, it is about moving as a fluid, uniform mass.
Right.
If someone throws a firework from the middle of a crowd where everyone is dressed identically, a local cop on the perimeter cannot legally make an arrest.
Because they can't identify the specific individual who threw it.
Exactly. The agitator simply melts back into the identical crowd.
And this brings a highly debated movement into the spotlight, Antifa.
Yes, it does.
Our sources include research from a data tracking group called ACLD, which monitors political violence. And they note over 1,200 acts of rioting and excessive police force in the U.S. since 2020.
That's a massive number.
It is. But ACLD defines Antifa, which stands for anti-fascism, strictly as an ideology. They claim it is not a formal organization, has no leaders, and maintains no membership roster.
Right. And that decentralized definition is the standard framework used by many academic researchers and even several federal agencies historically.
But wait, ACLED claims Antifa has no leaders. I struggle to buy that.
It is a tough sell when you look at the ground reality.
Yeah, you don't get military-style tiered attack formations in San Antonio or coordinated black bloc uniform distributions just by sharing an ideology.
Oh, you don't.
Someone has to give the order. Someone has to organize the probationers and the vanguard. That level of planning absolutely requires leadership.
Well, you are hitting on the exact operational friction that frustrates local law enforcement. It helps to look at it like a franchise model without a corporate headquarters.
Okay, I see.
There is no national CEO of Antifa. There is no national board of directors dictating policy from a central office.
But the local branches are operating with heavy coordination.
Precisely. The national ideology floats freely, but local cells are intensely organized. A local group in Portland or Berkeley or San Antonio can operate with extreme precision.
Using encrypted apps, right?
Yep. They use encrypted messaging apps like Signal or Telegram. They share tactical manuals online about how to defeat crowd control munitions.
Wow.
And they coordinate physical disruptions with those military-like tiers we saw in Texas. So while researchers call it an ideology, police on the ground are facing highly trained, tightly knit local networks.
And this debate, whether Antifa is an abstract idea or a tangible, organized network, is the exact flashpoint that just triggered the federal government's unprecedented response.
Because local police and university security are clearly struggling to handle these encrypted, tiered black bloc disruptions.
So the federal government is stepping in to forcibly rewrite the rules of engagement.
They are completely shifting the legal landscape. When local police are handcuffed by operational tactics like black bloc, the federal government brings tools to the table that bypass those local hurdles entirely.
Let's start at the absolute top of the chain. President Trump signed an executive order explicitly designating Antifa a domestic terrorist organization.
It was a huge deal.
Yeah. In the order, he characterized the movement as a militarist anarchist enterprise. This legally authorizes the federal government to use its full weight to investigate, disrupt, and dismantle these local operations.
Calling it a domestic terrorist organization is a massive escalation. It is not just a rhetorical label.
It changes what they can actually do legally.
Exactly. It unlocks entirely new surveillance and prosecutorial tools. Local police cannot easily wiretap an encrypted chat group organizing a protest.
But federal terrorism task forces can.
Exactly.
And the Justice Department is already deploying those tools. Attorney General Pam Bondi publicly called Antifa an existential threat to our nation.
Strong words.
Very. And she and Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon announced that the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force is actively investigating the UC Berkeley riots.
The FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force, the JTTF, getting involved in a campus protest is practically unheard of.
Really?
Oh yeah. The JTTF is designed to hunt down international terror cells and major domestic extremists by pooling resources from federal, state, and local agencies.
So pointing a terrorism task force at a college campus shows exactly how serious the DOJ is right now.
Absolutely.
And they are already making aggressive moves in the courts. The Department of Justice recently charged 2 Texas men with providing material support to Antifa.
Right, for that ICE facility attack.
Yeah, a highly violent attack on an immigration and customs enforcement facility. The attackers fired 30 rounds of ammunition at law enforcement during that incident.
Which is just terrifying.
And this marks the DOJ's first federal terrorism case against alleged Antifa-aligned operatives.
So if you zoom out and connect these data points, the strategy is clear. The federal government is no longer treating these events as isolated local campus riots or standard trespassing violations.
They're connecting the dots.
Exactly. By bringing in the JTTF and handing down terrorism charges, they are legally treating these local cells as coordinated terror nodes.
But the hammer isn't just coming from law enforcement. The financial crackdown might actually be the most devastating move.
Oh, without a doubt.
The Department of Education is stepping into the fight. Secretary of Education Linda McMahon launched a compliance review against UC Berkeley under the Jean Clary Campus Safety Act.
The Clery Act is a very powerful, yet often overlooked, consumer protection law for students.
Let's unpack how that actually works, because it threatens the lifeblood of the university.
Right.
The Clery Act mandates that colleges adhere to strict safety, security, and crime reporting rules.
Right.
And if they fail to comply, they lose their eligibility to receive federal student aid.
Which is huge.
Yeah. Secretary McMahon explicitly condemned UC Berkeley for allowing the campus to become unruly and violent just 2 months after Charlie Kirk was assassinated.
So she essentially told them, clean up the campus or lose your federal funding.
Hit them right in the wallet.
Exactly. And losing Title IV federal funding is essentially a death sentence for a modern university. If a school loses that aid, their students cannot get federal student loans to pay tuition.
Wow, so the university would face immediate bankruptcy.
Almost certainly.
So instead of a local cop just writing a simple citation for disturbing the peace, the federal government is treating a campus brawl like a national security threat, and simultaneously holding a financial gun to the university's head.
That is the mechanical reality of what is happening right now. By leveraging FBI terrorism task forces on one side and the Department of Education's Clery Act on the other, the federal government is entirely bypassing the local mayors and campus police chiefs.
You're going right over their heads.
Exactly. They are legally and financially forcing the universities to guarantee the absolute safety of conservative speakers.
That completely changes the risk calculation for every college administrator in the country.
It absolutely does. Historically, a university might tolerate a rowdy, even slightly violent protest. If the only cost is some broken windows, bad PR, and paying local police overtime, they absorb it. They just call it the cost of doing business and protecting free speech.
But now,
But if the cost of a protest escalating into a brawl is losing hundreds of millions of dollars in federal student loans,